Let me, before I get into this demonstration, because this is not a sales job for rVotes per se, okay? I mean, Warren and I have made it very clear, and that's the next slide. There you go, disclaimer. We have no financial interest in rVotes, nor do we intend to take a financial interest in rVotes, because the Voices of America, our mission is solely to provide the best practices that are available for enabling precinct neighborhood organizing and make that available to conservatives and Tea Partiers throughout the nation, okay? So this is not a sales gig, but it so happens, as we vetted a number of these software capabilities that enable neighborhood and precinct organizing, rVotes is the best. And you'll hopefully see, once I finish with this, why that is the case and why it's ideally suited for the Tea Party movement. You can do it manually, as described on the Voices of America website under Approach, step by step, and we literally walk you through how to manually create a walking list. And again, remember, creating a walking list means you take the voter records and you're finding the people who are most likely to agree with you, so you can knock on their door to confirm that they agree with you, okay? And then to make sure they go out and vote. That's the work process. This is now the IT enabling capability, okay, to make all of that happen. You can do it manually, or you can help yourself by using software. How many have seen campaign software, walking list creation? Okay. You'll be, those of you, you've seen the GOP, I imagine, Voter Vault? Voter Vault, okay.
Campaign Connection,
Okay. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with these capabilities. The rest of you will be blown away with what the left has been using to enable their organizing, community organizing, for a decade now. And because the rest of you, even if you had been involved, well, let me ask you the next question. How many have you been involved in going door to door on behalf of the GOP? Okay. So, see right there, those of you going around door to door were not able to touch the software, the Voter Vault, which is highly protected by the GOP. You got to touch because of your committee position, or?
No, I was working for a candidate.
Okay, you were working for a candidate. Okay, so this is sort of an introduction to what software is out there, what capabilities out there to enable your precinct neighborhood organizing. And in the case of rVote, it's very easy to get a hold of. So again, on Voice of America, because we identified as the best practices, if you go to our website, thevoiceofamerica.org, there's a rVotes main tab, and then there are sub-tabs on rVotes. And again, all of the content I'm presenting now is on our website as well. So again, you don't need to take notes. But by way of introduction of IT capabilities, let's go back to Florida 2008 and use that as an example of what we can expect. Here in Pennsylvania, for sure, in Ohio, given its importance, just like Florida, and I've been in many conference calls with Florida, talking rVotes, precinct organizing with the Tea Party folks. Actually, I've been there in person giving presentations to Tea Party organizations. But here's what happened in Florida in 2008, the year, President Obama won. They had, they had neighborhood organizing, 19,000 neighborhood teams focused on 1,400 neighborhoods, directed by about 500 paid campaign field organizers, physically knock on doors and phone banks. Okay, so we talked about neighborhood organizing. This is Organizing for America. They were in Florida in droves, and they, of course, pay people. Statewide organization. They've got leadership teams. They have a point system. I referred earlier, if you have house parties, it's like freaking flyer miles. You get points, okay? That way they identify their more active activists, okay? Which is helpful to know. Who are my most active people? And then we've got training similar to this, okay? They give organizing training on a regular basis over the internet, in person, all over this country, okay? And so we've talked about a lot of this stuff in the previous discussion that we had today. But notice here too, IT enabled. And this is what we're going to talk about now. I'm going to show you the capability they've used and are using, and the capability we need to start using to make neighborhood organizing, precinct organizing easier. And again, every person in this audience and friends and relatives can do this individually in their neighborhood, including the IT capabilities. You do not need to be an IT capable person. You don't need to have access to some IT infrastructure, particularly with rVotes. But look at this. They enable volunteers who have access to databases, the individual volunteers. Those of you who did not have access to the database of the GOP but knocked door to door, well, their site, they give volunteers access to databases. Constantly updated through the field computers and through myBarackObama.com. That's Organizing for America, by the way. Campaign also seems to recognize some volunteers won't even, they don't like a top-down system. They're like freelancers, but still they believe in the left cause and are going to do their own thing. They give them access to the database. The GOP would never in their wildest dreams think of giving access to their database to the Tea Party. You know, we're like the freelancers out there from their perspective. So anyway, we're already seeing in Ohio, this was an ad that was taken out in the city of South Euclid, job description recently. And look at that, We Are Ohio is the organization, and this is for this election, because in Ohio we've got two very important ballot initiatives this November. We have a constitutional amendment to Ohio's constitution that blocks Obamacare from taking effect in Ohio. Obviously that'll create yet another constitutional crisis, okay? Because the state is literally blocking it per the Constitution. It's likely to pass, by the way. It's got like 70+% approval rating going into November. And then there's another one that's kind of like Wisconsin's, you know, all of the hoopla we heard about in Wisconsin, collective bargaining. Well, we've got the same kind of situation. It's already been passed in Ohio, but they're trying to, they're trying to override it. So we've got two really big initiatives that have national implications in Ohio. So that's why they're recruiting people for their organization in Ohio. Just like Florida had an organization in 2008, Ohio has it this year, and for sure we'll have it next year, and Pennsylvania will probably have the organization as well. You know, if you do a lot of research, someone was mentioning to me, okay, in terms of, you know, studying what the left is doing and so on, you'll probably pick up on, you know, hey, they're getting ready to organize. And they're using IT capabilities to do that. And by the way, competitive salaries, good benefits, opportunity to fight for the future. You know, here we are, we're doing this all for free, okay? No one's paying us, we're on a shoestring, but fortunately we can do a lot of this, and it will be very impactful for free. We don't need to be paid. So let's get into rVotes. rVotes is literally a full campaign suite that's been used by the left, i.e. the Democratic National Committee is using the precursor to rVotes in all 50 states. Organizing for America is using rVotes precursor everywhere. And it's ideally suited for the Tea Party. And I'll explain all of this as I continue. The reason we have access to the same capabilities the Democrats and Organizing for America have been using for over a decade against us is because their primary programmer, Steve Adler, who started a company, he's a business guy, tremendous programmer, he created their software. In 2005, he took millions of dollars as a payout, a non-compete of 5 years, and the source code, the programming. And I asked him, you know, why did you do that? Why did you want to keep the source code versus asking for more money to get out of that company? He says, well, that was my baby. Besides that, after 5 years, I figured the conservatives, the GOP, would want this kind of software capability. After the non-compete is over, I'd make another multi-million-dollar, you know, kind of profit. I said, well, okay, that's pretty good. But he didn't count on change management. The GOP hates this guy because he's out there with software that is more capable than Voter Vault of the GOP. he tells me voter vault in comparison to what the left is using and what rVotes represent is more like the DOS operating system versus the Windows operating system or Mac operating system, okay? Absolutely, look, a testimonial. Bear to use? Okay, you will be blown away what we have access to now as a Tea Party movement, okay? Through this rVotes. So Steve Adler is the creator of the voter action network called VAN of the Democrats. Vote Builder is another name for it. He left the company, had himself handsomely paid. He always was a conservative. He says when he was there working, creating VAN with the Democrats, it was well known that he was sort of apolitical but really conservative leaning. He was sort of a joke. He's working for the left, but you know, he's not really one of them. He said, in fact, a lot of the other programmers were like him, apolitical, but probably more conservative than left. So there's no surprise to anyone that he comes out of his 5-year non-compete trying to now help the right, okay? Now still, you know, people wonder, well, who's this Steve Adler? There he is, in front of his servers. Now, you know, people are apprehensive, as was I and Warren. So we, over 2 weeks, we did a lot of researching who's Steve Adler. I want to know, who is this guy? Can he be trusted? And in fact, you know, I'm here to tell you he can be trusted, okay? He's one of us. He's a business guy. He could care less about the politics, okay? He makes that very clear. I'm in it for the money. And I don't deny anyone being in it for the money as long as they're being upfront, okay? What I personally detest are people who are trying to be part of the Tea Party and they're in it for the money, but they're trying to disguise it, okay? Send donations and all this, and they're personally gaining from that. Those are the people I despise. But if you're up front, look, I'm a business guy, I'm in it for the money. And by the way, his business model is one I like, and you will like as well, okay? That's okay. And the other thing, as I did research, I ran into a whole bunch of people. Carol Greenberg, she's Lady Impact Ohio. She's a blogger, an investigative reporter. She went inside of Organizing of America, for America, and learned a lot about their software and was blown away. And through connections then, she found Steve Adler and they found each other. Christine Cassidy of iCaucus, which most people are probably familiar with. iCaucus also, vetting of candidates, etc., is on the board. Anita Moncrief, the former Acorn person you've probably seen on TV, you've seen at conventions, etc., an African-American woman who used to be part of Acorn, has turned on them. And I've talked with Anita recently at a convention, and I asked her, so why did you leave? She says, well, you know, I liked a lot of the things they were for, but when I saw the corruption and you know, what they were willing to do to get the candidates elected, I couldn't stand for that, so I left. And so she's on the board. Ron Robinson, he had ProSync. He's in California, and I started working with Ron. And ProSync is actually a program that attempts to create walking lists off of voter records from the Board of Elections. And he's come out and even endorsed Nation Builder, rVotes. He's with Red State. He's a quite well-known blogger on Red State, for those of you who are on Red State, the blogging site. So anyway, Steve Adler, you know, it can be trusted. It's got lots of capabilities, walking list creation. I'm going to show you actually a demo with Steve Adler's voice on it. Volunteer phone banking, the same thing. Those demos are going to blow you away. You can do surveys with the software. You can do micro-targeting, get out the vote, volunteer management. It's got voter fraud capabilities in it. Steve will talk about it. Lots of capabilities. And, but here's the most important thing. And this has come up again and again as I interact with state leaders like Florida and Iowa. They're all starting to use rVotes. And they call me because Warren and I have been very instrumental in getting it into Ohio, getting adopted by the Ohio Tea Party leadership, specifically the Ohio Liberty Council that represents 70 Tea Party organizations, but then even beyond that. So we've done a lot of vetting, we've done a lot of thinking, and right now we have over 150 Tea Party leaders, and then there are groups who are signed on to rVotes. So we've got a lot of experience on how to deploy rVotes et cetera. So I have a lot of these conversations with Florida, Iowa, and there are a number of other states I can't mention right now that are soon coming on to rVotes. And a lot of times the discussion quickly evolves to, well, there are these other guys who have software. You mentioned a number of competing software offerings. And I found out, wow, you know, there really are a lot of other software providers who provide walking lists, phone calling, and all this kind of stuff. But here's the thing that people are missing, and what separates rVotes importantly from all of those capabilities. First of all, none of those capabilities have a proven national scalable track record like rVotes, because rVotes is what the Democrats have been using since 2001. Okay? It's just called Voter Action Network, VAN. But the other important thing, and this is what the left has leveraged so elegantly, is the fact that it enables autonomous groups to work with each other, okay, and connect. So you have your own voter record. You can start in one part of Pennsylvania. You can start in another part of Pennsylvania. You can share voter information to the extent where it makes sense, or keep it separate and private. You can, so you can, in rVotes, literally create all of these different organizations who create voter information as they go door to door with surveys, et cetera, or keep track of the voters you're contacting and share that information where it makes sense, or don't share it if you don't want to. So it's ideally suited with autonomous groups. And you have to think about, the left is made up of a lot of autonomous groups, okay? You have the gays, you've got the union guys, you've got all sorts of different groups who don't necessarily like each other all that much either. They just hate us, the right, even more than they don't like each other, okay? And that unites them. But rVotes has the infrastructure, and I've spent a lot of, in my corporate life, I spent a lot of time with Lotus Notes and its deployment. And I love IT, even though I'm a trained chemical engineer. I ended up leading the IT deployment for Lotus Notes in a Fortune 50 company, because that's been my hobby, and I brought my hobby into the workplace. The next thing I know, I'm running the deployment of Lotus Notes, okay? And then beyond that, e-commerce deployment for the supply chain. But so I know a lot about the security aspects of Lotus Notes and some of these massive infrastructure programs. And that's what Steve Adler did. He programmed that in so that on the left, all these disparate groups could work side by side, even though they don't like each other, but share voter information where it makes sense. And of course, the Democratic National Committee was looking at it all, as well as Organizing for America. And so this is ideally suited for the Tea Party groups, because, you know, let's face it, Warren and I are acutely aware that in all the regions, wherever we go, there are Tea Party groups and 9/12 groups who don't necessarily like each other, okay? And even when you've got Tea Party groups that split up, the leaders get into a battle, they have difference of opinion. But again, you know, they may not like each other all that well, but they hate the left more than they dislike each other, okay? So they'll work together on a common cause. So rVotes is ideally suited for that. The second, and a lot of the softwares all rely on a centralized database, which resides somewhere, okay? And they want to accumulate all the voter information data. They want to use us volunteers as the accumulators and providers of voter information. Go door to door, do surveys, or call people, do surveys, and submit it in this database. And like with the voter vault, the GOP collects all that information and holds it really close, okay? And then they do micro-targeting using that information. The other thing, because of this autonomous group deployment capability, rVotes is also ideally suited for deploying within a given Tea Party very quickly. And Warren and I are spending a lot of time in Ohio right now, where Warren has been vetting people who want access to rVotes, and I give them access. And basically, it's like Fabiola calls me, you know, for example, says, I want access to rVotes. And Warren would call her up and say, okay, who are you, blah, blah, blah. And once we decide, okay, she's legit, she's on our side, then I give her access. And I give her full access to the extent that she can now give others in her organization access to rVotes. So it cascades down in a pyramid structure, in essence, where she can give access to the next 5 people on her committee in the organization, and they in turn can then give access to other people who they trust, okay? So before you know it, you've got hundreds of people potentially all accessing rVotes, all being able to create walking lists, phone lists, inputting data in terms of voter information, etc. This is really powerful stuff. So, so like I said, the left has been using it. In Rhode Island, Steve Adler, when he first emerged, he lives in Rhode Island. So Rhode Island, they use the GOP and types used it in 70 campaigns there, including the guy who ran for governor. He lost, but they did all very well, considering it's predominantly blue state there, okay? I mean, it's like they're in worse shape than most of the states. It's been deployed now in Ohio. Like I said, we've got over 150 Tea Party leaders accessing it. Florida is being deployed, Iowa, and other states, and then there are endorsements. I won't go through all this. This is all on the website. But look at here, the rVotes, or VAN, as the Democrats call it, California statistics, 2008, when Obama won. 10,000 volunteer precinct captains, 7,000 VAN accounts deployed. This is just one state. 4,000 to 5,000 became active, so they deployed them, but not everyone used them. And then you get a bunch of other stuff. So you can see how just in one state they're using, massively deploying the software and giving volunteers in the field access to this to help with the precinct neighborhood organizing. Then you have, of course, in contrast to the Republican Party holds it very close to the vest. I mean, a lot of the precincts don't even have precinct captains, and you know they have a central database. So the answer is, you know, the Tea Party movement has the volunteers. There's the work process to get out the vote, and now there's software available that is very powerful that can be used. Now here's the really powerful thing from the business model standpoint, the way Steve Adler, as a private business person, is willing to deploy rVotes. Depending on the state. So if you're interested in deploying this to Pennsylvania, I would highly recommend that. Call me and we'll work with Steve, okay? Because he does things differently for every state, okay? So he has to make the financial decisions. But in many of the states, what he is doing is basically, he says, look, through this year and next year to the November 2012 election, if you want county or below access to rVotes and use all of its capabilities, it's $100 per organization, and you can sign up as many people in your organization as you want. You can't beat that. It used to be for free, county level or below, but then he decided, you know, people need to put a little money in the pot here. It's like, you know, are they serious or not? That way I at least make sure they use the stuff, okay? But $100 per organization, it's dirt cheap. He's making available. And now if you want multi-county access, okay, so that's free, multi-county access, so you want to run for mayor, school board, or whatever, that's where he charges a little more. And he's got a price range. It depends on the state. How many voters do you have in Pennsylvania? Ohio has 8 million something, 12 million? Okay, Florida has about 13 some million. So it depends on how many voters there are, because he imports all the voter records. He does the data cleansing. He even brings in some phone numbers. That's all ready to go. And then you use the software. You get access rVotes, and our voter records, everything is up there, and you'll see how it works. This is Steve Adler. I'm going to show you a video, and this will take no more like 20 minutes or so, 3 of them. One is an overview, one is a walking list, and one is a volunteer phone calling list. And just think about every volunteer, and you can actually, as you deploy this in an organization to continue to build off of Fabiola and the Pennsylvania Tea Party, so you deploy down to key people who are trusted entities, and you give them full capabilities, okay? You can literally dial in what capabilities you want them to have access to. Now, as it cascades down, people who are just like doing precinct walking lists don't need all the capabilities. They don't need to add more users or whatever. Well, you can click, 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 and give them only what you want them to have, okay? So they have less capabilities. Now, if they need more, you can always go back and edit their account and say, give them more. Okay, that's the beauty of this whole cascading downward system, because you control pretty much the security elements of it. And lastly, if there is a mole who comes in there, and here's like, you know, I say, hey, I'm a Tea Party here, let me access. and then I go and declare all of the high target valued voters as dead, okay? It declares them all dead, and then they're no longer available to be knocked on the doors and all this. The software catches that, flags it, or if you happen to catch some other mischievous activity on the behalf of a user, again, these guys, since it's been in existence since 2001, they've thought about everything. They can literally, with a click of one click, undo everything that user's ever done. So if they catch you in there and you're doing all sorts of crazy things to disrupt the system, okay? Not to pick on you, Jack, but I happen to know your name. They can basically say, you know, Jack's the user here, click, undo everything he's ever done, bam, we're back in business, okay? And that's what people would do, of course, go in there and say, you know, this person's dead, the address is different and all that, try to screw up the system. And once they're exposed, undo that. So with that, let me just give you a demo and hopefully this works. Turn this on.
I'm going to try to explain what rVotes is, and it's always a bit of a challenge because rVotes is many things to many different users. At its highest level, rVotes is a web-based application that allows candidates or political organizations such as PACs, 501cs, and so on, to find the competitive edge to micro-target their constituents and send off a message of influence trying to persuade them to vote for you and ultimately win the election. So that's sort of the bird's eye view of what it does and what it's good for. But it's really good anytime you need to contact voters and get a message across to them. When you log in, you basically log in as a user within the spectrum of a committee. The committee would be, say, for example, the committee to elect Steve Adler for mayor, or the committee to elect John Doe for governor, or the committee to change the way people feel about such and such. And when you log in, if you have access to multiple committees, as a consultant would, or so on, then you're given the option to select which committee that you actually want to log in and work in. You can think of a committee almost as like a bank account, so we're logging into an account. Because all the data that you collect and all the things you do within a committee are essentially private from within that committee. I'm going to select, from the Rhode Island example, the demonstration committee, which I use for demos, and I log in. Now, if you had only one committee, as most people do, it would just simply take you to your login page. This page here is completely customized based on the user that I am. So when I log in, the system knows not only what features I have access to and what buttons and things I can do inside the features, but it also knows the scope of voters that I can see, the scope of voters I can search on and touch. So for a small campaign, if I were doing a precinct race or a small mayoral race in a little town, I would have a universe of only the voters that make up the exact boundaries of the political makeup of that town. So I'm logging in here. I have access to the whole state. So if I were to do a search, for example, I could see everyone in Rhode Island. There's about 705,000 voters in Rhode Island and about 8.5 million voters in Ohio. One of the things rVotes does is allows you to, encourages you, in fact, to get as many users in your organization, in your committee, that is, to use rVotes. It allows you to easily create volunteers who can log in. You can create the users for these volunteers in such a way that they have very limited access to the system. So when they log in, they could see, for example, only this one box if you wanted them to do virtual phone banking for you, or the ability to open up saved lists that you've saved for them and ask them to log in and perhaps tag with people they know, or tag phone numbers, add email addresses, such as that. Ultimately, what rVotes does is it allows you to micro-target, find persuadable voters, persuade them, and then on election day, the integrated Get Out the Vote module makes sure that all those voters that we've identified in the months leading up to the election actually go to the polls and vote. And when they don't, the system produces a virtualized call center where volunteers can call from their own home anywhere in the world and in real time call those voters that rVotes thinks will vote for us but haven't yet gone and voted. How do we do this? Oh, it's cool. We use volunteers who have iPhones or smartphones, Androids, Blackberries, whatever. They sign up as poll watchers, And as a voter goes in to the polling station, the poll watcher simply types in the first letters of their last name, and quickly the voter will pop up onto the auto-populate field. The poll watcher simply clicks a single button on their iPhone or their device that says voted. If that voter had already voted in that election earlier in the day when someone else was doing the poll watching, it doesn't matter. If that voter had voted before, it will send off an alarm on the handheld device. It'll vibrate and turn red, indicating potential voter fraud, which is another level of the many levels of voter fraud built into rVotes. But assuming everything's on the up and the up, what it'll do is simply take off the name of that voter from the list of these people who are all over the state or all over the world making reminder phone calls. What's especially cool about this is because of rVotes' integrated volunteer management that we have. When a phone call volunteer calls a voter who hasn't yet voted and finds that that voter hasn't gone to the polls because their car's broken down, say for example, the integrated volunteer management already is showing the caller a list of all the people who volunteered to give folks rides to the polls. So in one phone call, you can say, why haven't you voted? And I can help you. Here are babysitters that we have on call. Here are poll drivers, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is integrated into rVotes. So one of the concepts that you want to take away from this is that rVotes acts as a sort of a customer management system, if you will, allowing you to identify and track information about your voters. And it also allows you to get out the vote and actually make sure that your efforts pay off on election day. But it does this in such a way that it uses a single database of voters. But every campaign, every committee that logs into rVotes, and there can be thousands of committees within a single state, each one of those committees has access and privacy, what we call a Chinese firewall, around all of their data. There are some elements of data that are shared universally within rVotes, but very few, and I'll talk about those later, but essentially everything of real value is private. In this section, I'd like to show you how it looks when you log in to rVotes. As you know, it's password and username protected. So I log in, and depending on my permissions, I'll see the modules that I'm given access to. In this example, I want to show you how to cut a walking list. And we're going to assume that I've already created a survey and the questions within rVotes. You can, of course, create an unlimited number of surveys and questions. And now I'm going to decide, I'm going to do a walking list to introduce myself as a candidate. So I'm going to cut some turf, as they say. I look at my precinct maps and I decide that I want to do a walk within Bristol County. And I'm going to grab precinct 0201 for this walk. When I do that, it enables these hyperlinks here on the left. And when you see an enabled hyperlink, it means you can click on it and then you get a multi-pick. So the street multi-pick allows me to see all of the streets within that precinct, and in parentheses we see the number of voters on that street. So I look at my map here in the office and I see that Hope Street intersects with Thames and then goes down Papa Squash Road, and then I can take a left on Diamond and then go out of Loring Road. So I hit continue, and at this point we've simply told rVotes we want these streets in our search. We haven't given it any additional criteria. Now, for our walk, we don't really care about age, but you know something? We don't want to bother anyone who's over, say, 81. So we're not going to walk anyone older than 81. For the sake of party, we want to introduce ourselves. We're not ready to talk to the Dems yet, so we're going to grab Republicans and, of course, unaffiliated. We don't care about gender. We don't care about any previous survey questions they answered. We just want to create a walking list from these people. But you know, now that I think about it, we don't want to knock on every door because we really only care about active voters. So I come here to voting history, and I see that I can select voters who voted specifically in any of these elections and how they voted. But I don't care. I only care that they're active voters. So I'm going to use this option. Include voters who voted in at least, I'm going to say, 5 of the last 10 generals or primaries. That way I'll get folks who are at least somewhat interested in voting. And when I hit search, It goes through the almost 1 million records and finds 70 folks that meet my criteria. As you know, you can go back and add names to this existing list that we just created. We can remove names based on criteria, and we can narrow down based on criteria. But assuming everything is fine, I'm just going to go forward and say, okay, these are the folks I want to knock on, and I want to do my thing. So I'm going to select reports, and the report type. Well, I'm allowed to create custom reports, as you can see. Not all users can, but rVotes comes shipped with 2 canned reports that are optimized already for most needs. One is a canned calling list, the other is a walking list. So I'm simply going to grab the canned walking list. When I do, it gives me the option to marry an existing script to the Canvas effort, so I can actually script and canvas the folks whom I'm knocking on. I'm going to grab this generic Rhode Island Republican canvas, but obviously you'd put whatever canvas that you've created there to ask the questions that you want to key upon. Then I simply click on walk order, and I can choose things like page breaks if I want to save paper. But the walk order button puts these orders in a predetermined, optimized way for me, and is handy for saving time. I hit next. This screen tells me how to format my browser. You see, we can print directly from any browser without any special software. But in order to do that, it's important that the user set up their printer preferences to match the illustration here. And it depends on the report what these variables will be. But we'll assume I've done that, and I hit finish. And then what you'll see is instantly I'm given on the web, here's the survey that we've created previously. And then you'll see the barcoded, route-optimized walking lists of the names that we're going to walk. And it's not particularly clear in this view, but when you go to print it, it's going to page break all properly on the page, breaking every street as we told it to on a fresh piece of paper. That way we can give certain streets to different volunteers. For example, if you didn't want to have volunteers and you wanted to save paper, you could tell the computer not to break a new page for every street and just put it all together and save paper. That's not really important. We're going to kill a lot of trees to run for office. But do notice that the system is going to have you walking up the odd side of a street, knocking on only the appropriate doors. And then you cross the street only once at the highest number. You then walk down the even side of the street from highest to lowest number, coming back to where you started at the bottom of the street. And that is all done automatically within rVotes to optimize the loop. It's called a circle walk, and that's all done automatically. So with these barcoded lists, you simply take your pen and your clipboard and you ask the questions and you circle the answers. And when you get back to the office, after you have, say, a couple hundred pages filled with pen marks and circles and dashes and so on, it's then the job of the person with the barcode scanner to scan this information back into rVotes, where you'll have it for further searching and for the Get Out the Vote effort. In this short video, I'd like to show you a real-world example of how rVotes can strike quickly and effectively for political gain. Let's paint a picture where we are a campaign consultant and our client is a woman running for mayor. She has a 23-year-old son. Her opponent just went on the radio, the local radio, and said that he wants to bring back a mandatory draft even though it's peacetime. Some crazy idea. You can fill in the blanks with whatever you want. But we looked at this when we heard it on the radio as a great opportunity to make a timely strike. And rVotes allows you to do this. So we're going to show you a couple things. We're going to show you how to create a very micro-targeted list and how we implement that over a virtual phone bank. So we saw the opportunity to contact other mothers of draft age men, explain to them that our candidate is a woman also of a draft age, is a mother of a draft age man, and what a crazy idea our opponent had, and basically vote for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is create that list, a list of mothers of draft age men. How do we do this? Well, let me show you. We're going to create a list, and we're going to grab the county that the radio show aired in, which was Belmont County. That's where our candidate is running. And I'm going to grab 18 to 25-year-old men. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Now, keep in mind, I don't want to talk to 18 to 25-year-old men, but we're not going to stop here. As you see, rVotes goes through 8.5 million records pretty quickly and finds 2,100, roughly 2,100 draft age men in this county. How do we get to their mothers? Well, we can use this feature here, fill households. So fill households will take the 2,100 people we found and find everyone else living with them. Notice it jumps now to 4,500 people. So now in this list, we have every family member who's a registered voter of a draft age man in Belmont County. Again, not what we're looking for, but we're still working on it. We can use these features, add names to the list, remove names, and narrow to take any list we have and further refine it. So I'm going to take this list and refine it using narrow. I'm going to tell rVotes that take this list of 4,500, but narrow it to include only ages of 36 to 57-year-old women. That is, they are too old to be the sisters and too young to be the grandmothers. And I can hit search there, and poof, we found 813 mothers of draft age men we can call in our virtual phone bank to target with our message. Now, I can further refine the list by going to narrow once again and remove all of those names that don't have phone numbers. But for this example, I'm going to intentionally leave those with blank phone numbers in because I want to show you yet another kind of cool optional feature that you can do in rVotes where you can have your volunteers find phone numbers for folks that you don't yet have. Keep in mind that rVotes is a massive data collection engine, and this is yet another tool to do that. All right. We have 813 people. All we need to do now is to create our virtual phone bank. So from the My List, if we're happy with this list, we can go here, vPhone Bank, and we create our virtual phone bank. We're going to name this Draft Age Mothers, and I'm going to describe it like this, blah, 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 but you want to generally put a very descriptive description, pardon my redundancy, in there, so when you look at this in many months, you'll know what it is you were trying to accomplish. Here we marry this effort to a survey, and so we've previously whipped together a quick Mothers of Draft Age Men script that we want to, basically says, do you know what an idiot our candidate's opponent is, and so on. Peer-to-pair matching is a new technology we developed, and it's optional. Allows you to say, I want to take this list and match my volunteers to the voters based on the closest age, or say the closest location, or both. So now I can create this neighbor-to-neighbor environment where my volunteers are best matched with the voters they're calling. Yet another tool to make this more personal. When I hit save here, I then tell rVotes what people I want to have access to this. So you'd see a list of all your volunteers here, and you can pick and choose as many as you want. And that's essentially how you've created your list. Now, any volunteer who appears in this list has access to this in real time anywhere in the world. But I'm just going to simply go here to my menu, and since we have access to it ourselves, I'm going to look at it here and show you. So we go to a vPhone Bank, and we see there's the draft age mothers we created. It's a fishbowl of 813 names, and any number of volunteers can call against this single list all at the same time or not. Here is the virtual phone bank in rVotes, and this is what it will look like for you and your volunteers to call from. Again, a list, a fishbowl of the 814 names in this case, can be called against by any number of volunteers at the same time. And rVotes will always ensure that the most appropriate voter is associated with the most appropriate caller, and no voter gets called more than once. So with the peer-to-pair enabled, as we did, I've logged in as a sample volunteer who's 56 years old and from this zip code. So rVotes is going to look through the fishbowl and try to best match the callers to me based on that age and zip code. So as you notice, I have Mary here, the mother of a draft age man. That must be Lewis here, and she's 56, and the closest possible zip code to me that's available. I can call her. I can call from Skype and dial right from here if I have that enabled, and give this survey. And so if she's not home, I can say not home, and save and get next, and poof, it grabs the next person. As you can see here, there's no phone number. We set up this virtual phone bank to include people without phone numbers. And why would we do that? Because if you choose to, you can have your volunteers gather phone numbers for you for future efforts. And it's as easy to do in rVotes in real time as ever. So I click on no phone number, and I can add the phone number should I have it. If I don't have it, I can also look it up right here from rVotes. And what we do is we pre-populate common services like 411.com with this information. And now all I have to do as a volunteer is click on the phone and cut and paste it. Did I click on that? Cut and paste it into the system, and I can make that call. And at the same time, I've just gotten a new phone number for our effort. So I copy that. I come in here and I paste it. Doesn't matter if I mess up the formatting. Save phone, and poof, it's there. And now I can call it. What you see here is everyone else in the family who's a registered voter. This icon here indicates that these people are not on the list, but if they answer the phone and you want to talk to them, you can on the fly add them if you choose. So if I talk to Corey, he's not on the list, but I click on him, it adds him to the list. The fishbowl jumps up a name. Now I can talk to Corey. I can say he cares about these things, and give my speech, save and get next. It'll mark him as checked, and there's Sharon, oh, but she's not home, and so on. And you can continue on. You can log out, log back in. rVotes will always pick up where it needs to. We can also have the system show us notes that we have, any previous notes that our committee has on this person, any previous contact information shows here. We can dynamically add notes, has nice roses, and that will save the note and timestamp and identify, who wrote that note for the person. We can extract emails. It, of course, does integrity checks. If I put a lousy email in there, it won't let me. And that is essentially how you can have teams of volunteers from all over the world making calls in a timely fashion on your behalf.
So you can see what the left has been using against us for 10 years. And these are the capabilities that they've deployed down all the way to their autonomous grassroots volunteers and paid folks. And now that capability is available to the Tea Partiers. Thank you very much.